Sarah Killingsworth, who is an expert on the NDSA, which is the National Design Services Act. I'll ask her to describe it and define it and tell us everything that we need to know about that bill in a little bit. But we would just like to express our appreciation for everyone that's joining us online right now and who will be joining us on YouTube later. So thank you so much for everyone in the audience who's watching, and also for everyone in the national office who put this on, and the advocacy task force. We wouldn't be doing this and would not be as involved in this if it were not for you. So thank you. Sarah Killingsworth, please give us an introduction about who you are and some of your background in AIS, what you're doing now, and why you got involved and care about the NDSA.
Sure. I know it's a lot to handle. The NDSA and legislative advocacy in general is not everybody's cup of tea, and I totally understand that, but I will try and make it interesting. I've been involved in the AIS a very long time, actually since my first year in the Bachelor of Architecture program here at University of Houston. That was 7 years ago. I had a soon-to-be chapter president who spotted me and somehow knew that I would be way too involved, and she got me elected the next year as an officer. And I ended up being chapter president. On the national level, I was actually chair of the Advocacy Task Force. So hello, Advocacy Task Force, I miss y'all. Wonderful task force, we did some great things, and I know that y'all are still doing amazing things. So thank you for your hard work. I was there, I know. When we started the task force, actually, I think about 2 months in, we were given the charge of handling and disseminating information about the NDSA. And I was like, what is the NDSA at that point? Because it was new, it was fresh off the presses. And we were all like, okay, so how do we handle legislative advocacy? What do we need to do to take that forward and make our fellow students interested in these topics? So I was kind of right-hand man to Stephen Parker back then, and Stephen Parker, as you know, is an AIS legacy, and he's done a great job. But he's the one that got me addicted to advocacy. So I thank him and blame him, but it's been great. It takes a lot of patience, it takes a lot of dedication. It's a long game. It's not about short-term returns, it's about small changes. So I really enjoyed it.
Wonderful. Well, we certainly appreciate all of the work that you've done with the Advocacy Task Force and with the NDSA. A lot of what this discussion is going to be is breaking down the NDSA to make it more approachable and understandable. And it's been cycling through the AIS for years now, but we really can't take for granted enough that, or we shouldn't take it for granted that it's the same level of understanding comes back year after year. You know, we're constantly getting new people and trying to re-explain and invigorate why we should be talking about the NDSA. So can you give us as much definition and just basic information on what the NDSA stands for and what it is, what it's fighting for?
Well, first of all, the NDSA is obviously an acronym that stands for the National Design Services Act. And because that is a mouthful, that is why we call it the NDSA when we're talking about it. I totally understand that it is hard to keep students interested and engaged and staying with a legislative advocacy process because turnover in student organizations is just so quick. I mean, it's only while we're in school that we're really involved. And that's totally fine. That's just the way it works. The NDSA was actually started, it was generated based off the 2012 AIS financial survey, which went out to all the members back in 2012, and they did a pretty comprehensive survey of all the students, seeing what their debt load was, what their typical expenses were for studio, how much it cost them to buy materials and textbooks, and get back and forth from class and home. And the surprising thing that I think they discovered through that survey was that student debt loads for architecture were about 33% on average higher than the national debt load average. And that was a bit of a worrying number for them. And so the AIS and the AIA got together and started the process of drafting this bill. And in 2014, it was introduced to the Senate, it was introduced into the House, which is where most of it starts. And that was its first introduction. And it's been introduced one other time since then in 2016, and it'll be introduced again. We're going to shake things up, right?
I know, sorry.
Everybody's falling asleep. We're talking about legislation in Congress. So the NDSA is still pretty new for a bill. It's a baby bill. And it's still under constant evolution and refinement. And that's what we're currently doing, is we're currently evolving and refining the language to better reflect the current situations about both debt, which is still high, 4 years later, and also better reflect certain political realities and better reflect the needs of our stakeholders, including people like the community design centers we are interfacing with and other groups in architecture like the AIA and the ACSA and the AIS. So there's a lot of balancing act in the wordsmithing of this. And that's why we're very hopeful and optimistic.
Yeah, great. So as you mentioned, I mean, it was kind of started in 2012 and it's only 2017, but bills typically take a pretty long time to get through anything. So in bill life, that's not that long. In student life, that's a very long time. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the bill actually says? I mean, it obviously was driven by this idea of architecture students have extremely high debt and not always the highest rate of return from education. Some of the lowest, well, not lowest, but on the low side of starting professional salaries if we're looking at other professional fields. So what does the bill actually say?
Sure. You're right. Considering expected salaries for entry-level architects out of school, the debt loads are pretty extreme. And that's a problem which really holds back the next generation of architects. If they're burdened by debt that early, how can they make, honest choices about their career path? So the NDSA fundamentally is two parts. It is a community design service bill as well as a student loan repayment bill, and it uses the one to facilitate the other. It's written to encourage present and recently graduated architecture students to contribute design services in order to work off their student debt. So it's using existing monies that the government is either going to spend already on services for affordable housing or community development, and it is also utilizing existing debt. Anyway, these students are already in debt to the government, and it's only focused on direct loans. So in that way, it's a very practical bill. It does build off the work of other public service loan forgiveness bills like the PSLF, but it expands them to really focus on and include architectural design as a service that helps and facilitates the public good. And that's really what we're getting at, that design itself facilitates the public good, and that it's not just a luxury. Design is not just something that you should be able to afford, but design might be a right, actually. We know that bad design can make people sick. Things like sick building syndrome. We know that bad design can hurt people. Buildings that are poorly built or poorly designed can definitely injure people both physically and psychologically. For those things, why would we not treat good design as a right?
Right, that's absolutely right. And this does follow the precedent of what some other professionals or professions are doing. Is that correct?
You're totally right. So pro bono services are pretty common among professional fields, including doctors, lawyers, nurses, teachers, anybody that contributes to the public good as defined by the government often has some sort of condition about pro bono work. And they also work off their student debt through pro bono work. Part of what we're proposing is a conversation about pro bono work in architecture. We are saying that our design services almost deserve to be shared. We think that we have something that we can give back through public interest design and pro bono work that can really help people and help increase the value of the architecture profession, which is also a problem. Not everybody sees us as valuable as I think we could be.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And we're always trying to find more ways to communicate and tell why our profession and why our skill set and mindset are as valuable as they are, as we know them to be. You mentioned earlier that that this crippling student loan debt can really negatively impact the next generation of architects. And I'd like to talk about that a little bit in terms of what are some of the problems that this bill is trying to solve. We talked about loan debt. We've talked about design not being a luxury just for people and communicating that value a little bit more. So I'd like to talk about both of those things in terms of what the true audience of this bill, who it would be helping. And I think it's a lot of different audiences, right? So let's start with the loan debt. Like how does taking on a lot of loans in a very expensive education, how does that impact either the demographic or just the general makeup of schools right now?
Right. So I think that we are seeing kind of a crisis with student loan debt. Obviously, a lot of factors have led to the ballooning of college tuition and the ballooning, therefore, of student debt. And it's not any one person's fault, and it's not any one factor. It's many. Obviously, architecture students are the future of the profession, right? We're the most diverse class of young professionals that this field has ever seen. And burdening those young professionals so early in their careers with debt really hampers the diversity of this field. I think it prevents us from making choices that are best for us and actually forces us to make choices that are best for paying off our student debt. I've actually faced that choice myself. And while I don't regret anything, but I do wish that I had been freer to make certain choices and not have had to be bound to choices about paying off student debt. So, just so everyone knows, if you're struggling to pay off your student loan debt or you're struggling to pay for your degree, you're not alone. There's so many of us that are doing the same thing. And architecture is one of the most expensive degrees on most college campuses. So the bill itself and kind of what we're trying to push towards is that we're kind of basing this on two premises. The first premise is that educating our population in general is in the public's best interest. It shouldn't be viewed as some sort of burden, that the government has to take on. It's actually better for society. An educated population means greater contributors to the economy and greater contributors to standards of living. So education is great. Education is going to help everyone, whether you get it or not. And also we believe that architectural services and design thinking are valuable educational investments. Everybody's asking for design thinkers. Everybody's asking for our type of education now in every field. So I think it's critical to educate more people with the type of education architecture prepares them for. I think that'll help diversity in other fields as well. It'll open up opportunities for architectural graduates, both inside and outside the profession. And we face such struggles as young people that I really want to bring young people up out of student debt and out of limited choices and give them the opportunity to reshape the profession more towards the diversity we see around us.
That's right. Yeah, that's so empowering. And it's interesting to think because we talk a lot about how design isn't just for the wealthy and it's not a luxury. It should be a human right and something that everyone agrees with. And I don't know if we've gotten to the place where we're talking about design education isn't just for the wealthy and isn't just something that, a specific type of person can take on. Because you're right, design education and any type of education is also something that anyone can benefit from and can benefit any sort of future that you want to have. So let's get a little bit more into who are the people who would be benefiting from the community service that recent graduates or is it community service that you could do while you're in school, or is it just something that as a recent graduate you have a specific timeline, or who are you working with to do this service?
Right. So the bill language is obviously still evolving, and we hope to open it up even more to make it more flexible for architectural grads. Obviously, one of the limitations of the PSLF, the Public Service Loan Forgiveness, is that you're required to work for either the government or nonprofit for 10 years in order to be forgiven of your debt. We see that as kind of a hindrance for an architect's career because that often doesn't align with our traditional career path, since we pretty much require employment by an architect right out of school to finish our full education and to get that AXP and licensure path started. So what we'd like to see is some of this loan forgiveness opened up to part-time work, both for recent grads and older grads, as well as students. Potentially, while you're accruing your debt, you could earn credit towards having your debt forgiven. I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, whether that'll hold water in the bill, we'll see in the future. But I think that's the right direction. And I think that opening up student loan debt forgiveness to a wider audience with a more diverse career path, needing that architectural education in the field is a good thing. I think that also doing this pro bono work or doing this community design service work for the communities teaches us young people a lot about projects. We are very hands-on. We're supposed to be interfacing directly with the clients of the community, understanding what they need and not what we think they need. Those are all great skills that can contribute towards your regular day job.
Right.
So I think this has a benefit for the field and for the young graduates.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're seeing in a lot of curriculum models that people are going more and more into a community service and public interest design and civic engagement mentality of it's important to educate young architects with that mindset of getting into the community and helping as a part of your design education. So I completely agree. Let's talk about what's next. You know, we're 5 years into the NDSA kind of rewriting. What have you been doing? I know you're sitting in an NDSA coalition right now working on that rewriting. What does the NDSA coalition that you're on see as what's next and who can get involved in driving this forward?
Wow, has it really been 5 years?
Since 2012, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Every time we say those numbers, the NDSA Coalition is an AI advocacy group, and it's mostly originally formed by a lot of the alumni from the AIS Advocacy Task Force. So there's me and there's Stephen and there's Corey, and we were originally all working with AIS on advocacy. And it just became a natural path to join something that the AIA eventually put together. And the NDSA Coalition is a new format for engaging especially young architects and young associates in the advocacy work that the AIA is doing. So it's a collaborative group. We have collaborative leadership. We all give input together on where we see the bill moving towards and how we can, grow advocacy and grow our grassroots network. It's really great. I've enjoyed collaborating with everybody. It's been kind of a joint collaboration between the NAC, the National Associates Council, and the YAF, the Young Architects Forum. So it's got a good demographic and a lot of us that are at differing levels in our careers, but all still kind of facing the same issues. Student debt is still a thing.
Yep, absolutely.
So,
years. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's fantastic. And I remember maybe it was a couple of years ago that the advocacy task force at the AIS was asking people to call their congressman and start pushing this bill forward. There were mailers out there for how you can get involved. Is that something that we're also still pushing right now, or is something to look out for as AIS members in the future? Maybe I should be answering that question, but
yeah. Obviously, I am a past AIS member and I'm still involved. So this applies to both us young graduates and current students. You're right. Legislative advocacy is very interesting because you have to really time your campaign. You have to be very prescriptive about what you encourage people to do and when. And I've learned this over the years of doing letter writing campaigns and things like that. And those are super, super effective at the right time. So we are planning to reintroduce the legislation after we worked on some language edits, which we're currently in the process of doing, and kind of firming up the functions of the bill as written. And so look out for that, and we'll obviously keep all of you updated, you, Sarah, and everybody else listening, on when that comes into play. There'll be an AI press release, so that's a great thing to kind of subscribe to and watch. But I think that what students can do most valuably right now is definitely engage with us. I do have some surveys that I'm looking to get data and feedback for based on current students who are taking on debt and recent graduates who have debt. And I'm happy to share those with you, and you can pass those on to your members. But I would love to get your impressions and experiences with debt and your impressions and experiences with getting experience with limited choices. So look out for that. The other thing is, once it does go live in Congress, we will need students to start sending support letters to their representatives. And that'll help us immensely, especially the representatives on the committee it is going to, which it first lands, I think, in the House Financial Services Committee. So if you have a representative on the House Financial Services Committee, be sure you're ready to target them, because those are the most valuable supporters we can have. As long as they approve the bill, it'll go back out to the House, and then they can vote on it. Then it'll go to the Senate, they can vote on it, then we have a real bill going. So that's what we're aiming for. If you're a young architect, a young associate member of the AIA, or a general member of the AIA, the most valuable thing you can do right now is join their advocacy network. So what they've started to create is a framework for a grassroots emailing network where you can sign up and you can select the issues that are interesting to you. You can select the NDSA, and they'll notify you anytime a change or an update happens on that topic. So please go to the AI advocacy page, check out what they're doing, check out what they're pushing for, and definitely try supporting them as part of their grassroots network.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much for giving us those actual examples. I was just pulling up my phone because I found this really interesting resource on Facebook. An AIS member actually recently posted this, that if you text your zip code to 520-200-2223, it'll send you like all of the representatives, who they are, and so therefore you know who you need to be targeting within the next couple of months to get the NDSA passed. So just thought I'd share that little tidbit of very good knowledge.
And can I say, I am so proud of our generation for being so politically active and so cause-oriented. You know, guys, let's give ourselves a round of applause because we're doing really good. Exactly. Good job on all of you for being so politically active, for being so invested in your future and the future of the country. It's great. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. It's all good.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so as we're kind of, coming to a close on what the NDSA is, and getting that survey out about what people's debts are, especially just by the numbers, but also the choices you have to make based on your debt. I think that's almost the most interesting information that we can be gathering is what are, you have this certain amount of debt with your architecture career. Does that hinder you in any way from making the choices that you want to make? And
we talk about it as numbers, but we got to remember there's people behind these numbers.
Yep.
There are real lives impacted by those massive numbers of debt. And so that's what we always have to come back to, is there are people there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, in talking about the choices you have to make after graduation to pay off very real amounts of debt, what are some of the other ways that, Sarah, you've seen maybe either some people that you graduated with or just other people in the profession stay involved and civically engaged in service, even if it's not with the job that they took on? I mean, you mentioned that the most important thing we can do is get involved with the advocacy networks of our AIA components, and getting involved with AIS is obviously very important. But what are some other means of community service we can take on as young professionals, if you have any examples of that?
So with students, getting your toes wet in advocacy, I would definitely say start obviously with your Freedom by Design chapter. I think that is design advocacy because it is designed for people, and it is designed meant to change outlooks and change situations. So start there or similar. Looking locally, there are so many opportunities for volunteerism and design activism in your community. You'd be surprised, actually. A lot of universities have an affiliated CDC or Community Design Center, which is kind of what we're looking to use for the NDSA. And those are typically funded and part of the university. And ours, particularly in Houston, is the U of H Community Design Resource Center. And I've participated in several charrettes with them, which are all-day affairs. And we invite in members of the local neighborhood to give us input on what we're doing, and then we come up with a proposal at the end of the day. That's great fun. So look for things like that, design charrettes. Design competitions are often put out by these things. Your AIA might also have opportunities for you to volunteer. So that's a great place to start. Obviously, Open Architecture is another national network of advocacy and community design. So look for that. Formerly Architecture for Humanity, now Open Architecture. Habitat for Humanity is obviously probably the most famous one. And I hear that it's hard to get on their list of volunteers, but maybe that's just a Houston thing because we just have so many people willing to give their time.
Yeah, awesome. So thank you so much for those examples. Those are certainly great places to start when thinking about getting involved in a giving back sort of way. So thank you so much for taking the time to explain all of these things to us. And I guess I'd like to, last question and just wrapping it up. What are some of the biggest resources and places that people can go and read about the NDSA if they want to learn more, or if they have any questions? Who can they reach out to?
Oh, of course. Obviously, if you know me, if you're Facebook friends with me, if you find me on Facebook, feel free to reach out. We also have a home to the NDSA on Facebook. It is Facebook.com/NDSA, or I think it's fully National Design Services Act. I think we spell it out. So if you just Facebook.com/National Design Services Act, you'll find us. Obviously, reaching out to the AIS or the AI advocacy group will get you in our direction. And signing up for the AI Advocacy Network is a great place to start. Also, we put out regular kind of press releases, and we're looking to do that pretty soon as the NDSA comes back into play in the House. So watch out for that. We'll send stuff out through the AIS email network and AIA. But also for general reading on advocacy and a general kind of understanding of what we're talking about, if you're interested in more of this stuff, I highly, highly, highly recommend an article called Good Design, a public interest movement that redefines architecture. And that's by Stephanie Garlock. And it was in Harvard Magazine 2 years ago, and it's one of my favorite pieces on public interest design. I actually think I posted it on our Facebook 2 years ago, something like that, on the NDSA Facebook. So look for that. There's a lot of stuff out there by both City Lab on guerrilla urbanism or tactical urbanism, 5 myths about pro bono design, and we'll post all of these links in the description. But, you know, again, looking up all these resources about loan debt is really important because you should educate yourself on these issues. And feel free to indulge your curiosity.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much for that information. And we'll certainly have those links that you mentioned posted, I think, on this YouTube account. We can also post some links as a resource, and certainly on the follow-up articles that we're posting to wrap up how this discussion went and pulling out some of the highlights. We'll highlight those resources as well. So thank you so much for everyone who joined us right now. Thank you to the National Office. We have Rachel Law taking notes outside. So thanks to our ever diligent Vice President, and to the Advocacy Task Force who's really sparked these discussions and made this important thing that we're here to talk about. It's so important for us to have these discussions, like Sarah's mentioned so many times, that it's not just about the individual burden that you're taking on and why you should be upfront about how much loan you have, but to talk about it as a national issue and something that we want to solve for everyone, not just for individual selves. So,
and this is not a final solution on student debt, and we know that. You know, it's not a final solution on architectural advocacy or a final solution on equity in our field, but it's a start.
It's a start, and that's as good as anything. I mean, I don't know what's better than a start. So wonderful. Well, thank you for joining us. We have one more installment of the Advocacy Month, this great series that has been going on. It's going to be next Thursday, March 9th at 7 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be discussing diversity and equity. So one last installment on what advocacy can mean for your school and on a national level. So thank you again, Sarah, and everyone else. Please have a great evening. So see you next week.
Thanks for your time, everybody.
All right, bye.
Bye, Sarah.